everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back to another video. Today we are sharing the first video of 2020 and I thought it would be fitting to share a New Year's card. So I decided to create a card that features some number dynamics as well as this little snowflake here from the Serene Snowflakes. We're going to use that snowflake to replace one of the zeros in the year 2020 on our card. For the numbers, we are using the Impact Numbers Die-namics. These are really great because they're large in size and they're nice and tall, so they act really well as a nice focal point on the card, since that is what's going to be the main thing that we're going to see when we look at this card. Now for the background, I wanted to create an ink blended look, and I was kind of in my head thinking that I wanted to have like a night sky look with some snow, and then have the 2020 over top with that big snowflake. So what I decided to do is start first with peacock feathers, which is kind of a bright blue color. I wanted to make sure we had some bright colors kind of popping through the darker colors that I'm going to add. So I did the peacock feathers first and I started right in the center. I want the color to kind of go out towards the edges and kind of fade off as we get to the edges of the panel. So I started all of the ink blending in the center and just kind of worked my way out towards the edges. Once I had a nice base layer of the peacock feathers, I went in with chipped sapphire and I added just a little bit here and there to add that darker blue color. I also came in with picked raspberry, which is a pink color, and added just a little few spots of that as well. And now I'm going to go really bold here and go in with black soot. Now I'm being careful to kind of wipe off my brush before I bring it to the panel because I want just a little bit of that black to show through, but I don't want it to be like completely black and cover up all those colors that we've already added. So I did a few spots of the black and then I went in with the other colors and kind of ink blended over top to kind of bring everything together. And right now it kind of looks like a mess. It looks kind of muddy and it looks pretty dark, but I really love how this turned out once we added the snow detail over top. So the first thing we're going to do is add the water. Distress ink reacts with water, so when you put water over top of it, it kind of lifts off the ink. You can see there when I dab it with my paper towel, we have these white splotches that kind of show through. And I'm kind of going for the look of snow or stars in the background. So I added all of the water splotches first and got a really nice effect with that layer. And now I'm going in with some white acrylic paint that I've watered down with some water just to make it a little bit thinner. And I'm using a paintbrush and an acrylic block and I'm flicking that onto the panel. And you can see what it does is it just shoots this really fine mist of that white over top of that whole inked panel. And we end up with what looks like a snowy night sky. I've set our panel aside to dry. Since we have that wet ink on top, we need to let that fully dry before we start to assemble the card. And while that's drying, we can go ahead and work on the other pieces that we're going to add. For the snowflake, I just grabbed a scratch piece of cardstock that had a piece big enough that I needed for the stamping, and I stamped our snowflake with Versamark ink onto that white cardstock. I'm now covering it with Platinum Sparkle Embossing Powder, so it's a silver embossing powder that has some sparkle detail to it. And I went ahead and heat set that with my heat tool, and I also die cut it with the coordinating die. So now we have a shiny, sparkly silver snowflake, very festive and perfect for the center of our numbers here that are going to spell out 2020. For the numbers on the card, I want to keep them completely white, but I do want to have a little bit of dimension for them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to layer them one on top of another, which is going to make them a little bit thicker, almost like they're chipboard. You could skip this step and put them completely flat on the card, or you could add little pieces of foam adhesive in behind each of them, and that would also work really well. But I decided just to go ahead and glue them one on top of another, and I ended up with 3 layers for each of the 2s as well as that 0. And then keep in mind we are going to use that snowflake for the other 0. For the snowflake, I'm just going to use some foam adhesive since it's a pretty big round area and it's really easy to add that foam adhesive on the back of it. Okay, so right now we don't have a lot of color on this card. We have that ink blended sky that we created, but it's pretty muted colors except for that little bit of pink that we added. So I decided to coordinate with that pink color and do our sentiment strip on a pink piece of cardstock. This is Razzleberry cardstock and I've stamped Happy New Year onto this. This sentiment stamp is from the Biddy Holiday Wishes stamp set, and I'm going to go ahead and heat set that with my heat tool, and I'm going to die cut it with the Skinny Strips Die-namics. And now we have all of the pieces that we need to assemble the card, and our background is completely dry. So like I mentioned, I want to use the snowflake for one of the zeros in the 2020, so I'm going to position my numbers so I have them kind of spaced out where I want them on the card, making sure I'm leaving enough room for that snowflake. And I'm also going to kind of figure out where I want to layer this banner over top. I just kind of moved it around, got an idea of where I wanted it, and I'm going to go ahead and put all of these onto the card with my liquid glue. I like to use a T-square ruler anytime I'm adding something to the center area of the card. It just really helps to get everything completely straight across as well as up and down, and it helps with the spacing to make sure everything is nice and even. So I got those first two numbers in place, and then I took the same liquid glue and added it to my first two that we're going to add to the year on this card. I put the snowflake in place just to kind of make sure I'm leaving enough space. And then I'm going to go ahead and add this to the card as well, and use my T-square ruler to make sure it's lined up across the card, since there is a little bit of a gap in between these numbers because of that space that we left for the snowflake. I added the foam adhesive to the back of our snowflake, and I'm just going to go ahead now and get this into place. And I kind of turned it so that it fit nicely in between the two twos on that card. It just is nicely spaced in the center of them, and everything looks like it's meant to go together. I'll go ahead now and add the sentiment banner over top. So I have some regular liquid glue on there as well, and I've just layered it over top of the snowflake as well as the end of that 2020 year. And then I can add our finished panel to a weight card base. And you can also see that I added some clear sequins kind of around the snowflake as well as the numbers. I thought it would kind of look like a little bit of dimensional snow, so I added those on and also filled the centers with silver stickles just to kind of match that snowflake. I put a few more dots of silver stickles on their own just to add a little bit more sparkle since it is a New Year's card. And then once I have that done, our card is complete, and we have a really great card to ring in the new year that we can send to someone special. We would like to take this opportunity to wish all of you a very happy new year. We're so excited for 2020 and all of the amazing things to come, and we can't wait to share even more videos with you, cards, and all of our new products that we'll be releasing in the next year. Thank you so much for joining me for another video. As always, I appreciate you being here, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks so much for watching.